EU-komissio on julkaissut hyvin kunnianhimoisen kiertotalousohjelman ja samaan pakettiin liittyy myös komission 5-vuotinen ohjelma Euroopan talouden elvyttämiseksi ja rakennemuutokseksi. Ja näistä meille tulee kertomaan Euroopan jäteyhtiöiden kattojärjestön FEADin puheenjohtaja Peter Kurth. Peter on saksalainen. Hän on toiminut pitkään FEADin varapuheenjohtajana ja tämän vuoden alusta puheenjohtajana. Ja YTP on FEADin pitkäaikainen jäsen. Otamme tähän ensin Peterin alustuksen videona ja sen jälkeen Peter on livenä mukana keskustelussa. Voitte esittää hänelle kysymyksiä tämän alustuksen aikana myös suomeksi viestiseinällä. Käännämme ne kysymykset sitten hänelle englanniksi. Tämä seuraava osio on tosiaan englanninkielinen ja muu webinaari on suomenkielinen.
Hello Otto, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues of our Finnish association, dear participants at this conference. Thanks a lot for inviting me to this web conference. It's my first visit in Finland, unluckily a digital one, but due to the crisis, and so I'm very happy about this opportunity to give you some ideas about the work of FEAD and the Green Deal. Let us first have a short view on the current situation of waste management industry in Europe. 20-30 years ago, it very often was only bringing waste from one point to another. That means waste management has been a logistical services industry and not really a raw material industry. Right now we are delivering a lot of raw materials to the producing industry. We are running more than 2,400 recycling and sorting plants. We have a lot of plans to win energy from waste, and we are one of the fastest growing industries in the European Union. I think the number of 320,000 jobs you see on the slide is a little bit old. We estimate that we could create more than 1.5 million jobs if we would reach in the European Union a common and ambitious level of waste management. And waste management is not only logistic, it's running plants, it's creating recycling activities and delivering raw materials to the producing sector. The voice of the waste management industry in Brussels is FEAD, an association with colleagues from 20 national associations from the EU member states. Most of the members of the European Union have an association working with waste management and recycling, and those associations are member of FEAD. We have 5 expert committees concentrating on organizing how to deliver the competence and know-how from our companies and the member associations to the Commission, to the European Parliament, and to the common work in Brussels. More important is the waste management industry is one of the key sectors to reach ambitious climate and environmental goals. The waste management sector is not only able to reduce massive the CO2 and methane gas emissions, the recycling sector is able to deliver the raw material with which the producing industry is able to save most of the industry. Let me give one example. If you produce a piece of aluminium, you can save 96% of the energy you need if you can use aluminium scrap instead of the raw material bauxite. And so it's not a surprise that the European Green Deal with the Circular Economy Action Plan is concentrating very much on our sector. This is a big challenge, but also a big chance. And we should, everywhere in Europe, discuss how we can enrich this process with arguments and ideas and power. The European Green Deal, as every one of you know, tries to make Europe CO2 neutral until 2050. A lot of hope of the Green Deal, a lot of expectations are on the Circular Economy Action Plan and the EU Recovery Plan. Mrs. von der Leyen, the President, announced very clearly the most important part of the Green Deal is the Circular Economy Action Plan, and the most interesting point of this plan is a new product policy. So we are not longer looking only at the waste situation, but we are looking what has to be changed on the production side to realize circular economy. As you all know, Green Deal was before the Corona crisis came. We now have the challenge, another ambitious challenge, to make sure that we are not only talking about how to protect the economy, how to conserve the economy like it has been before Corona, but to see that we make another step to economy of tomorrow. Economy 4.0 is very often described as the digital economy. We have to make sure that it's not only digital, it's also circular. We need a circular economy to give our economy the strengths they need, and we need them in Europe, but also to make clear that we can work with much less resources. So the money we will organize, or the member states will organize, you know, the amount of 1.5 trillion euro, we need also to invest in an infrastructure for a modernized economy, for a recycling and circular economy. As I mentioned, the Circular Economy Action Plan is the most important point of the Green Deal. And it's very important to understand and to see that waste management and also recycling management and industry is not the same like circular economy. It needs the cooperation between many different actors to close the loop, to realize circular economy. Waste management is only a part of the circle. We collect the waste, we treat it, we produce recyclates. To make circular economy from this waste management situation, we need the producing industry. And that's why it's so important that the Commission also says the main point of the Circular Economy Action Plan is another understanding of the producing industry. To give clear rules, to give a clear and ambitious regulation of the European Commission and the Member States to make a circular economy possible. It's not the job of the waste management industry to guarantee that their products from a recycling process are again used for production. This is the decision of the producing industry. We deliver the raw materials for this producing industry, and we should work on deliver more and better recyclates. But to use these recyclates for the production process is definitely the job of the producing industry, and that's why clear rules for the producing industry will be the most interesting and the most controversial issue of the next years. On this slide, you see some of the interesting dates of this year and the rapporteur we have to work with, but I want to supply another point. You see in the circle that also the final disposal is interesting for the work of a circular economy, because we have to take out some material which is not useful for a recycling process. That's what we bring to a landfill or to waste to energy or other incineration plants. Definitely taken out of the circle. And so we have to see which role does this solution deliver. And we expect and we want from the Commission that we find a common position very soon, that you should stop landfilling of untreated waste in Europe. Because if you allow a often very cheap way to bring the waste out, there is no ambitious framework, no ambitious economic framework to hold the materials in the circle. Waste follows money, everyone says. And that means if you offer cheap ways to organize your waste, to solve your waste problems, then we will not have the economic background to keep the material in the circle. And we should have a common understanding of hierarchy. First, indeed, is to avoid waste. But the second is reuse, recycle the waste. And the last acceptable way is to bring the material you don't want to recycle in an incineration plant to win energy from this. This is acceptable. Landfilling should not be longer acceptable in a European Union which has really ambitious environmental goals. We have a saying in Brussels that in Europe, on the Brussels level, the music is composed which will be played in the member states the next years and decades. And that means more and more the important rules are not discussed and decided in the member states, but on the European level. And that means also we have to concentrate our lobby activities for the members of the different states and for the companies in these states on the European and Brussels level. And I'll show you only some of the consultations which are currently active in Brussels and where FEAD tries to organize the know-how of the member associations to bring it in the process of creating the new legal framework. We have the Circular Economy Action Plan I mentioned before, but we have also consultations which are not identified at the first view as important for our work, for the work of our companies. We have different materials and waste streams like batteries, packaging, textiles. We have to discuss the common role of waste shipment. We have the taxation directive and the sewage sludge directive. We have to combine this in the new industrial strategy. So this means the consultations and the different decisions of European Commission has to work together and should not be controversial. These are only some. We expect more than 35 directives and regulations only in the next 2 years under the circular economy package for us. I have made an overview about the different legal framework activities at the end of this presentation. Perhaps you may ask, why is the legal framework, why are the regulations and directives so important for our work, for the work of our companies? It's very clear. The development of the waste management sector the last years and decades only took place when there was the needed legal background. The development we need doesn't come by itself. You need clear rules, a clear framework to have a fair competition, to make sure that everyone is talking about the same words and problems, and to make sure that everyone knows which rules are needed. And it's not only to have the right rules, reality only changes if the rules are really implemented in the daily life of the member states, of the people of our companies. A legal framework only on the paper, only written on the paper, not realized in the reality, doesn't change anything, and it's worse than the situation before, but it destroys a fair competition, and it destroys the possibilities we could make if we together have some environmental progress. A very interesting point is the expected regulation about waste shipment. Is it possible, should it be allowed to export and import waste to other countries in the European Union or outside? There is a emotional and media rumor that this should not be allowed, that it's better to keep the waste in the country to avoid disadvantages and to avoid pollution in the nature. Our position here is quite clear. We need the possibility to export and import waste. Let's take one simple example. If a country doesn't have a steel industry, doesn't have a paper or a chemical plastic industry, it's absolutely necessary to export the materials which are collected in the country to other countries to make recycling and circular economy possible. If you keep the material in the country without having a producing industry, circular economy, you can forget about it. But we definitely need clear and ambitious rules here, because if it's possible to export waste in countries which are not developed waste management situation, it's not only obviously a problem for the nature, it's only a problem for the waste management and the producing sector in the countries which export the waste. So we definitely have the biggest interest to avoid illegal activities, but the same interest is to make legal activities, importing and exporting, possible. Germany imports and exports each year more than 20 million tons of different materials. We take hazardous waste from African countries because we have the facilities to treat them. We export paper, old paper, to countries which want to protect their forests and their woods, but to deliver their paper industry. If you really want to develop our economy, not only in our countries, not only in Europe, but also worldwide, to a recycling and circular economy, then you have to make sure that raw materials from the primary sources and raw material from recycling sources have the same possibilities to compete, the same fair possibilities to compete. That's why waste shipment is so important. That's why we need to deliver clear facts, arguments in this consultation process to make sure that not an emotional feeling, but a very clear analysis of the economic situation will be successful at the end. Das fand ich auch gut. Another regulation which has been underestimated over a certain time is the regulation about energy recovery from waste. I want to come back to one point. We need the stop of landfilling of untreated waste in Europe, untreated household waste. That's not only a question of energy resources, of the real estate, of the methane gas. It's also a very important point to have the economic background that investments in recycling, in waste management industry make sense. But it's not possible to recycle 100% of the material. It's not possible technically, and it's definitely not possible economically. So you need also a way for those material you will not be able to recycle with sense, and which you don't want to bring to a landfill because the landfills are closed. And that's energy recovery from waste. We need this possibility, and we need activities and investments in Europe to deliver a convincing infrastructure from those plants. That does not mean that we do not see the hierarchy and the priority of waste avoid and recycle, but we need a solution for the materials not recyclable and no longer brought to a landfill. And so we are fighting that energy recovery from waste is accepted as part of a sustainable waste management and circular economy. It's definitely necessary. And it doesn't make sense to have the expectation that you can recycle 100% of the waste our societies produce. Incineration plants need a fair position and need a fair legal framework as well. For the common way from waste management to a circular economy, we face some challenges which are only possible to solve together with the producing industry. It's not possible for the waste management companies and associations alone to identify the problems. You only know if you are the producer of a certain material. Let me give you one example. A material was used for buildings 34 years ago, very common, but this material is today identified as dangerous. Dangerous for the health, dangerous for the environmental situation. And that means, of course, it's not longer allowed to work with this material in new buildings. But what about the material which was used 30 years ago and which is on the recycling market now? Because if you want to make sure that also at the mineral situation, at the building, the waste from building and street work, for example, is used for recycling for new activities and investments, you have to solve this problem. What is with the materials which were used, perhaps without that we know that? Or perhaps we know that there was a dangerous material, but we don't know where it was precisely used and how to identify this. That means We need information of the producers, which are the materials they work with, they use for the production. We need those information also available in 30, 40, 50 years when things we produce today are perhaps on the recycling market. The time is a little long, but let's say it's not only some months or years, it's a longer time, especially for buildings. That means we have to make sure to have a circular economy which is accepted by politics and societies, which gives us the security that we work with materials which is proved as non-problematic. That means we need an ambitious eco-design for products from every kind of the possibility, because also what is today in a car, in textiles, in other materials, can be a problem in the future. And so we should know from the producer side which are the material we have needed, where are the information available, and that has to be clear not only on the national side but also for the European side. Because in a Europe of a free market, of no borders, also the producer circumstances in other countries of the European Union has to be comparable. This is a big challenge because only in Germany we have more than 4,000 new patents of plastics each year. That means we have to win a very good overview what is on the market, how to identify the dangerous materials, how to make sure that those informations are available when we need them. One directive we expect very shortly this year is about the batteries. Batteries are not only an interesting product because of their raw material situation, it's only a problem of dangerous substances. Everywhere in Europe you face really problems right now with the fire problems of batteries, which are treated in a way that damages the batteries. And you have a huge increase in the collection and in the market role of those batteries. We talk about the so-called e-mobility. We talk about different products for the private households which are used with battery, and all those batteries face this problem of fire risks and of being a problem for the security of the people and the environment. We need a very ambitious regulation here. We need ambitious collection goals. We need a clear system of responsibility. Who is from the producer side responsible for what? We have to develop an eco-design which makes sense, and we have really to make sure that we bring those materials back to the recycling, back to the reproduction of new batteries. It's a real problem, unfortunately, not only from the eco-management, but also of the fire risk. We have a lot of accidents here all over Europe, and we welcome that this regulation is on the top agenda of the European Union. We expect a very clear and ambitious legal framework. Everyone knows we don't have the problems with paper, glass and scrap. We have the problems with plastic. This is the main also emotional issue for the public opinion and also for the politics in Brussels. We will not be able to solve the problems from waste management today to circular economy of plastic tomorrow. We need here the experts, and so we participate with a lot of experts in the Circular Plastic Alliance, which tries to organize the different expectations of the producing sector, of the waste management sector, and what the politics is requested to deliver on legal framework. A problem we should solve very soon, because it's also in the global and international frame background one of the most challenging environmental problems. At the end, I would like to repeat some of our main positions. There are some more, but these are, I think, the most interesting ones for the following discussions. We need an ambitious product policy. To realize circular economy, it's not longer acceptable only to have a look at the waste situation. We need to bring the products field, the producers on the table, and we need them all to realize the circular economy and to close the loop. The public authorities can play a very interesting role if they would finally understand their role as buyer, as market participant. Mandatory green public procurement is in the law, but should be implemented in the reality. If the public authority buys something, they could say, I don't accept things which are not recyclable. I don't accept things which are not coming from a recycling process. We need the recycling targets for industrial and commercial waste. We need eco-design and eco-labeling. We have to make sure that our export rules guarantee quality of the material, but also allows to the recycling materials a fair role in the competition to the raw materials from the primary sector. Worldwide circular economy means worldwide fair framework to export and import material. And for Europe, we hope and expect as one of the next steps the decision that, let's say in 2030 or 35, the landfilling of untreated household waste is no longer acceptable and forbidden. Now you may say a lot of work to be done, a lot of problems, a lot of interesting activities. How to organize this? How to organize the support of our members, how to organize the support of the companies. We have to face that not everywhere in Europe we have a situation that our lobby activities are very present on the public market. To be accepted member in the discussion with parliaments, with NGOs, with the producing industry, this is really a challenge. And FEAD, as it is today, will not only be able to play the role which we all need to be played. And so we opened our regulatory framework, and we welcome and we invite companies who want to be part of our common work, who want to support our work for a better circular economy with an affiliated membership. Accept this as the commercial block at the end of my little presentation. I would be happy to answer your questions in the following discussions, and when I'm able to answer other questions via email, I would be happy to get a mail from you. Thanks a lot for this intention. I'm looking forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for your presentation, and welcome live in our webinar.
Hello, Kenneth.
It's so nice to have you here, even in a digital way. But I'm glad you made it. now it's our chance here in Finland to learn more about the situation at the European level and maybe also from some German examples. So please don't hesitate to put in some questions or comments in our message wall. But Peter, first point that I would like to raise in your presentation is a question about product policy and the mandatory recycled content that you mentioned, because this is a debate that is already going on in Finland too, because there is a need to boost or promote the market of recycled material, and if there's no demand for the material, there's no market. But how do you see it in practice? Are we getting closer to some European rules, or should we go ahead on a national level and in member states?
Thanks, Kenneth, for this interesting question. As you all know, the European Union opened the window in the last period under President Juncker and established first time that in 25 all the member states have to implement a minimal recycling content for new PET bottles. So since then we are talking about the instrument, and everyone knows we will not have the same quota in all the different products. There will be exemptions of this rule, but in general, I think a minimal content is the key instrument to establish a really recycling market. Otherwise, you will not be able to close the loop. And we are willing to discuss with the producing industry. We are willing to discuss everything about different quota, about exemptions. Is it an instrument working for cars, for electronics, for plastic things? We will see. And we will not be able to make this discussion alone. We need the producing industry to win convincing solutions, because we want to be not only a continent with ambitious environmental goals, we will also want to be economically successful. And that's why we need the discussion and need the cooperation with the producing industry.
Yes, we have very good success story about the mandatory content in Finland. We were able to create a market for biofuels in a way that the mandatory percentage of biofuels was introduced, and now one of the Finnish companies is one of the leading producers of biofuels worldwide. So it really gives us hope that it could work also in recycled materials. Maybe another question about or comments on waste shipment, which is another hot topic at the moment. You know, we have already discussed this in FEAD meetings too, but you stated that there is a need to have the possibility to export and import waste material, and gave a very solid examples why this is the case. But in addition to that, there should perhaps be a separation between member states or internal market and EU and third countries, because if we restrict the volumes or the ways we nowadays export our waste to third countries, especially to Asia or Africa, that could be a way to strengthen the industrial base in Europe and to promote our own industry and manufacturing of recycled materials and to use them here in Europe. But of course, in internal markets, there is an imbalance between products and materials at the moment, in a way that if a product is allowed to enter the market in one member state, it's allowed in other member states as well. But if we have a waste material or we have different types of end of waste criteria between the member states, and these are real hindrances or obstacles in the internal market moment. And if the internal market is not functioning well, then the circular economy is not functioning well in Europe.
This is for sure. If we have a free market in Europe, we need a common level of environmental standards and a common understanding of dangerous, hazardous waste, for example. This is for sure. And I also agree with you, Kenneth, that we need a difference between EU member states and states worldwide. But my two main messages are again, if you want on the global level a more circular economy, you need a fair competition level playing field between recycling raw material and primary raw material. You cannot take without any problems the materials out of the nature without making a problem to export this, but only make it problematic to export recyclates. Yeah, and a country which doesn't have an infrastructure to treat different waste right, or a country which doesn't have a producing industry for scrap or glass or paper, is forced to export and should be able to export. Otherwise, the story of recycling ends exactly here. Yeah, and we import in Germany hazardous waste from African countries because they don't have acceptable plants to treat the material. This makes sense. You need a very clear overview. You need a very, very clear implementation of the rules we already have. But you should not stop. You should not forbid this.
One comment from our audience is that the message of clear legal framework resonates very well here in Finland. But on the other hand, some other participant comments that as in all European issues nowadays, the risk or the worry is to have too heavy bureaucracy in these common rules, and this may be the result if the framework is not clear enough.
Exactly.
But maybe one last question, Peter. You put it very well that in these cases the music is composed in Brussels, but it's been played in member states. So how can we? Because now all the member states are very active in promoting circular economy and maybe updating the national regulation. How can we make sure that the harmony of the music is not lost? So it should still be symphony and not jazz that we are playing in the member states. How do you see the balance between Brussels and the member states?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think not all of the member states are focusing their efforts on circular economy with the same engagement and empathy. We also have in the member states arguments and discussions like Green Deal and all those activities concerning circular economy is for good times. Now we have a problematic time caused the virus, and please stop the green activities. Now we have to save our economy. At this point, we have to be very clear. If we spend hundreds of billions of euro to save the economy, we should save the right economy. We should save the sustainable economy. We should organize the money for the investments we need for a sustainable economy and future. And I think this is a huge battlefield between the different member states and the European Union, but our sector, not only FEAD, also the associations of the member states have to repeat their clear messages concerning an ambitious waste management and recycling framework, and to organize the next step to a circular economy. We have clear messages, we have clear arguments, but we should be more visible and audible as associations, not only in the member states, but especially in Brussels. And that's why I support all the activities, all the conferences in the member states to bring our messages very clear forward.
Yes. Thank you very much, Peter, and all the best for your work in Brussels. See you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks. Bye.
Yes, bye-bye.